The Converted Man here. This is my rebuttal to the rebuttal of From the Grave to the Flame Ministries and our ongoing debate. Is there empirical evidence, repeatable test, logically coherent argument for the existence of God? Now he speaks on in this rebuttal of two possible tests. Well, that's wonderful. We need actual tests, not possible ones. We need actual tests that are doable and retestable. But the examples he gives are the burning bush and then the parting of the Red Sea, which he does something very odd with both of them and explains their mundane origins, which is great that he's honest, but is very bad for his argument here. He said that the burning bush was located near a volcanic vent. Well, that's a problem. The bush isn't burning, it just looks like it's burning. And that you could test that the bush looks like that if you could find that location. Well, there's plenty of locations like that, I'm sure, and yes, that would be something that you could show is a thing. And that's all it does. It confirms that that event was recorded to some degree accurately if you could again confirm that actual location where it is mentioned. But it's a mundane event, and you're not proving God. You're proving that this event is something that happened, and they attributed miraculous deity to be attached to it. The parting of the Red Sea, he says, is caused by a wind set-down effect. Okay, that's a problem. You're testing a natural phenomenon, not God. And these events were written as if they're miraculous, not as if they were naturalistic. And all you've done is show that they're naturalistic, so that saves me some time. I'm grateful for that. There's a difference that the Bible event is recorded as a miraculous one. Or either they saw this and thought it was a miracle because they didn't know better, or it became legend over time. Who knows? But all you can do at best is say, well, this is a phenomenon that we've discovered to be true, and so they recorded this phenomenon. And we can't say that at that time it was miraculous because we have a mundane explanation. So perhaps at that time it was mundane. Either way, even if you want to say it's miraculous, still, that's not a test to run because you'd have to show that miraculous is a thing. And neither of these events are tests upon God, unless you could show that they're directly linked to God and that they're impossible without God. Casual events, he then goes on to, asking the question of how did we get from X to Y? It's irrelevant, doesn't matter, it's not part of this debate. Asking these sort of questions is a formal fallacy in actuality, but nonetheless, even if we don't know what came first or how we got from here to there, it's not really relevant. He then goes on to the objects of the mind and says that, well, these two are causal, that we need a mind before we have objects in the mind. Well, yes, so God is an object in the mind until you prove otherwise, which, by the way, my syllogism was not refuted, so that's a problem for you, and you have one last chance to try to resolve that issue. As far as pondering what the cause of the universe is, we don't know. And that doesn't entail anything. It doesn't entail God, doesn't mean anything. And maybe we don't even know if there is or isn't a cause. But even if there is, So what? Doesn't mean God. Doesn't mean anything. The other problem is that the argument presented has still not been fixed. The superlative everything fails to meet the standards of logic. We have here two tests that are proposed that show natural causes and would be confirmation that those natural causes existed and that they were recorded perhaps accurately at best if you were to grant everything here. And that's it. It doesn't show God. There's not a test upon God. If you wanted to test my identity, there's many ways to do it. I could give you blood samples, could test DNA, and so on and so forth. We need something like that for God. That's what is being asked for by the argument at hand. Tests about a bush that seems to be burning but in fact isn't, or that water that moved but just did that because of wind, aren't tests of anything besides those natural phenomenon. Back before we understood thunder, some ascribed thunder to Thor. So they might have written, well, there was this thunder and that it was from Thor. And today we'd say, well, no, that's not from Thor. But an apologist for Thor might say, well, no, we can still test that there's thunder, so that must mean that there's Thor. No, it doesn't work like that, because we know the naturalistic explanation for thunder, and my opponent gave the naturalistic explanation for the burning bush and the parting of the Red Sea, so we don't need God to explain those things. And even if both of them were mysteries, if we didn't know how thunder worked, or we couldn't explain the burning bush, and we knew that it did that somehow, that still would not prove Thor or God, and still would not be tests of Thor or God. Here's a summary of this first rebuttal. God is still an object in the mind as proposed by my syllogism. My opponent did not counter even one premise of it. No tests were proposed that could be used to show that there's a God. No test upon God. No empirical evidence 1 or 2 was presented, and we still lack any logically coherent argument for God. When we set up this debate, we gave time for each rebuttal and opening and for the conclusion. My opponent has a conclusion left, and he has plenty of time to work with. In fact, since he's gone under time in his other videos, he'll have all that time plus the time that the conclusion was to work with. If he does not present us with empirical evidence, a repeatable test, or a logically coherent argument for God, not of something else, not something that points to God or hints at God or suggests God, then not only are we skeptical of his conclusions, but he has lost the argument at hand. And I submit he should make a video where he says as much.